Welcome to the Unsolicited UX podcast, the show where we explore how user research can drive smarter decisions, maximize runway, and accelerate growth for Series A and B startups and their investors. I'm your host, Jay Keatsman, a UX research strategist passionate about helping fast-moving teams turn uncertainty into clarity. Today, I'm excited to welcome Amanda Jensen to the podcast. She is a senior UX researcher at Education Testing Service, or ETS, which measures proficiency to support learners, leaders, and organizations in shaping a better future through advancing the science of measurement to enable human progress. Amanda is a multidisciplinary researcher, designer, and strategist with a diverse range of expertise spanning tech, education, speculative design, film, AI, and social impact. She currently leads UX research efforts across 7 products within ETS's Future Nav product portfolio, powering talent acquisition, upskilling, and reskilling decisions to drive business growth. Amanda has also produced 2 documentaries and a feature film. You can find her on LinkedIn and at imjensen.com, both of which you can find in the show notes below. Hello, Amanda Jensen. Welcome to the Unsolicited UX podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So your current title is Senior UX Researcher at ETS, or the Educational Testing Service.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just briefly share a little bit about ETS and your role within the company?
Yeah, so I've been with them for about getting close to 3 years, and I've worked across various products within the company, but ultimately I lead UX research efforts across currently 7 products within our Future Nav portfolio. So ultimately, this is like a configurable talent solution that essentially looks at the opportunities within orgs to upskill or reskill their employees, which of course helps internal mobility, employee retention, and just overall good vibes within an industry. And so basically I've been supporting a multitude of products right now in the sort of HR and employee space, but I've also historically worked with sort of that K through 12 space. So interviewing like middle school students and their teachers, as well as college students. So anything really in that kind of learning tools that can support and scaffold learners of all ages, really. I've done research across those.
Would you frame ETS as EdTech?
Yes.
Okay. And I know that you have a background in like ethnography and other sort of design research spaces. What has been the most unique about this EdTech space for you?
I think what's interesting about the ed tech space, would be that sort of mission driven aspect for me. I really do a lot of mentorship on the side and support a lot of whether they're peers or, friend of a friend in career strategy. So I think ultimately that boils down to, storytelling and that sort of personal branding and how that's positioned outward, which whether you're in research or strategy or design, you have to be a great storyteller. What's interesting about this space is it is remote. It's not boots on the ground, and so it has its own unique opportunities that come from those. I wouldn't even call them constraints, but just opportunities to reposition how you leverage this. And I think what's unique too is it's around products that ultimately support unique learning styles or support skills development, whether you're assessing someone's ability to critically think or be an innovative catalyst in their role, or write a 5-paragraph essay.
I have so many questions. I want to focus in on where to start. Because I'm really interested in the wide range of users that you've had to focus on, given that you've done assessment work for children and young adults, and now probably older adults. Maybe, I don't know.
Like you
Yeah,
can
like
define
working
the age ranges for
professionals.
me. Working professionals, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to start with what I think is probably the most complex for a researcher to navigate, and that would
Mm,
be probably legally navigating conducting research with youth.
right.
So can you talk a little bit about if there's unique aspects to that or how you've had to navigate that as a design researcher?
Right. Yeah. So typically, at least here, we have sort of a dedicated insights ops, individual. So whether you want to refer them as research coordinators or people who engage with that user pool, develop, recruit for,
That's
they
nice.
they handle that across the board. So whether that is in that K-12 space, that sort of early adult, kind of in college age, or up through HR and employees. So they're typically the ones that are handling that recruitment. But what's interesting about the company I'm at now is it's very much remote. And so, although they're headquartered in Princeton, New Jersey, they have a lot of people all over, North America, at least from the U.S. based project team that I serve on. So there's an interesting opportunity there to speak to people from all different types of coasts. I know we've chatted on this previously, but there's all kinds of cultural innuendo and just different ways of also educating and how the learning space is viewed across the U.S. From coast to coast and in between. So I would say, um, with especially with minors, of course, go through all of the legal and careful consent forms with parents, and then sometimes, if parents would like, they're so welcome to sit in on calls with their child, or just sort of navigate through. How I approach working with children is, of course, and should be a bit different than how I would work with a college age student, or a working professional that is quite seniored or what have you in their field. There's still those core tenets of being able to build rapport quickly, create an environment that's affirming, with a lot of opportunity. Again, you've got especially that age space around middle school age. You really want to see them where they're at cognitively in their development, but also speak to them in a way that's not at all demeaning or authoritative. Meet them like where they are, especially when we're navigating a user flow or a product, and they tend to be very fun interviews, I will say. But yeah.
Generally speaking, have you found that, because like I want to hypothesize, my hypothesis is that like interviewing children would actually be more effective or easier because they're less guarded, or like they will be less filtered. I don't know if that's true. That's kind of my question. I'm leading with a hypothesis.
Yeah.
What have you
Yeah.
found?
We love a hypothesis. I think it's humans are so diverse and so unique, and you could get very open children, and you could
Hmm.
not, just like you are working with adults, or very seniors, executives, no matter who you're kind of interviewing. So I think it's that reflexivity to be like aware of, no matter what the cards are dealt, being able to be really agile and just work with the energy that they're putting out there and supporting. I think it totally depends. I think I'm classic researcher answer, but it depends on the human that's on the other side. And I think the biggest thing is just being able to effectively like read the room and just support them how and where they need.
Feeling stuck in product limbo? You're not alone. At Unsolicited UX, we help Series A and B startups find scope and clarity with fast, focused research and decision-making workshops. Whether you're shaping strategy, aligning your roadmap, or avoiding your next expensive wrong turn, our custom facilitation and just right research turns chaos into clear direction and extended runway. Stop guessing and start moving. Book a free discovery call at unsolicitedux.com and get your team unstuck fast.
Let's talk a bit about your more recent work in terms of working within the working professional space.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to think, because it seems to me like there's a distinction between those who are in like an educational program versus those who are being told you have to take this course or you have to go through this assessment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if there's any unique considerations for dealing with assessment or ongoing education for someone who maybe didn't choose it for themselves.
Right, absolutely. Basically, the kind of service or opportunity that what we're developing is essentially to support those from a talent management. So think like internal company individuals, so people who are already employed by a company, but then also talent acquisition. So being able to support those who want to maybe enter a company or who are in the market. Um, but what's interesting about the Future Now portfolio is, we're also looking at, professional development. So say you're already in a place somewhere and you or I are employees at the same company and we want to learn how to upskill and reskill and have that autonomy to choose what that is or see where my assessments are hitting, or perhaps I want to leverage some of my outputs or insights to maybe hop into a one-on-one with my manager, or maybe a promotion cycle is coming up or what have you. So the the interesting thing about the transition from like, I'm in school or I'm like attaining a degree in a career versus being in that career is that there is a unique sense of autonomy here, but then also the ability to leverage it for your growth. So I think just in the same way that for college age, it's empowering to kind of navigate these abilities to either upskill or reskill in whatever it is that you're interested in. And then also having the data to back those decisions. That's one area that we're finding that is a real wonderful differentiator for us, is supporting HR with these, historically people have referred to them as soft skills, which is like less the terminology used today, or durable or transferable. That's getting a little bit more into the 21st century sort of reference of them. But this idea to have the data on these things, typically they've always come from a manager telling someone in talent management, like, oh, this person, I'm just, they've got so much potential and I think that they could really excel in this, that, and the other. But it's really coming down to like kind of word to word, but having data as evidence to back that up through whether it's the individual self-reporting, but then also taking objective assessment throughout that, whether it's like looking at AI literacy or what have you, I think is a unique sort of offering around this particular service.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I was just reading an article yesterday about how 5 years ago you would still hear, if you want to future proof your career, go
Mm,
into coding and go into STEM.
right.
And now with AI, we're finding those might be some of the first to go from a career standpoint, which is a
Mm,
bit scary for a lot of people. But the point of the article was that it was speaking to how new emerging theories, or at least what's surfacing
yeah.
today, is that more of these soft skills are the future proof qualities.
Mm,
The guy, I wish I could remember the article, but the guy who wrote the article was saying that the recommendation now is that a degree in the humanities is starting to become more of a recommendation than a STEM. When it used to be the opposite, like people would
mm,
laugh at a philosophy degree 5-10 years ago because it's like, what are you going to do with a philosophy degree? But now they're saying the importance of learning how to think
mm,
is the value of a degree moving forward, which is not necessarily something you get in a field that teaches you just what to think as opposed to
right.
how to think. So
Mm-hmm.
after that framing, I'm curious about this idea of data collection around soft skills,
Mm-hmm.
because I think you bring up a really good point that we've heard it for a long time. Soft skills are the future. Soft skills are important,
Yeah.
but in a very qualitative way. Like
Mm-hmm.
people just say, "Oh, it's important to have soft skills. That's where leadership develops, etc."
Mm-hmm.
But then you go into an interview and no one really cares, or at least in my experience, that you have soft skills. There's
Mm.
no hard, tangible value that you can read.
Mm-hmm.
So I was intrigued when you said that one of your differentiators is around this idea of being able to quantify the value of soft skills, or that is how I interpreted it. So I will stop talking. Can you talk more about that?
No, I think it's really good, where you're postulating from, because I do think, what that article is getting at. And I think as a, hopefully, society, we're starting to see the value in that. And like, humans are humans, and like we all have unique perspectives, and our life very much shapes the individual we are. And it's how we, again, back to the storytelling, we're circling back, but how you position yourself, no matter the role you're going for, the discipline you're entering, or perhaps you're pivoting, whatever you're doing, being able to have a real understanding of the who you are of it all. And to do that is to look at those things. It's not that how you are that way or what you do to get there. Maybe we'll call those the technicals, right? Like those are the technical skills, but it's the who, just like qual and quant, right? But yeah, I mean, we look at, I work with a lot of incredible individuals who have very advanced expertise, whether it be in psychometrics or assessment building or construction, and sort of the learning science that goes into all of that. And so it's very much just steeped in like decades of research and insight, but also like a prowess from multiple disciplines to sort of look at how someone would navigate through these things and then have that kind of insight after the fact, whether that's through going through one of our assessments, whether it's multiple choice based or something that's more immersive, and then being able to come out on the other side and actually have, like you're saying, quantifiable data for that, and then to have the agency to leverage that in your own company or as an HR individual to have kind of the assets to support your internal employees or external employees, I think is really special.
What do you, and this might be out of the realm of UX research, but what are you finding? Like, if the company believes this is a differentiator, do you have any sense of how this information is being utilized by companies, or like, because if you're quantifying something that has historically been, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
difficult to quantify or
Yeah.
to tangibly, action. How do you action, soft skills? I think it's easier to action technical skills. That's, again,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
speaking from my opinion, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm still really interested in this. Has the company, is it seen more action with the outcomes of these assessments?
And when you say action, what exactly are you?
I guess I'm curious how the information is being used or applied.
Right. That I would say, it's a bit of our own secret sauce. So I would maybe leave
Sure.
that in
Yeah.
the proprietary lands, but
Sure.
but it is
I have to
indeed.
ask.
Yes, yes. It is indeed being, again, I mean, ETS has been around over 70 years. And so they're a global leader in assessment and education, within that space. And so I think you've got a bit of that, not only reputation, but also just evidence in general. And so how they're, you know, um, innovating, and how they're creating new ways to approach assessment given 2025 versus how it might have been years and years ago. I think that that's quite interesting and special about how they're approaching things. And I think being on the product team specifically, it's been really fun to collaborate in a space where we're all just sort of like pioneering and pushing forward this new positioning. And again, like you mentioned before in that article, and sharing some of those sentiments around it, it's a bit of a new norm. That this is different, and it's different in the way that it hasn't really been done before. And we're not the
Right.
only individuals playing in the space, certainly, but being that global leader, I think, is certainly a unique kind of catalyst point to be able to, bring in AI and innovation as we build out these offerings for our, end users.
In terms of innovation, how, if at all, has this emergence of AI impacted the assessment space?
Yeah, I mean, well, as a whole, I can't speak to all of the assessment space, but where I work in specifically, a lot of our products are looking to the realities in the room. So leveraging AI, whether it's from my side, I use a lot of AI to support our products that are, ultimately AI, driven. And so whether that's through like early stage testing, where we're doing things like multimodal research, or that Wizard of Oz method I referenced before in prototyping, being able to very much think outside of the box to get those early indicators well before the code is built, to also be that North Star on how might we position this. So by creating a near immersive coded environment for users on that other end, we get very close indicators at what it may be like if it was coded. And so that becomes a beautiful, lighthouse, or sort of guiding light, to then, bring that to the team at large and advocate, okay, well, we're seeing this, or this is the type of response that came out of here, or actually this co-design opportunity, we hadn't even thought about this new feature or this or that, so it's been pretty fun, because like I said, I have like a traditional design background, so being able to kind of leverage, of course, the research side, but also very strategically and analytically move through ways to very out of the box work with users to get out those early stage indicators.
I guess in Texas, there's a school that has piloted running their school program predominantly through AI tutors.
Mm,
And so actually they're it's a bit of a test pilot right now, but the initial data is showing that it's quite effective
mm,
in test results, in assessment outcomes.
gotcha.
Um, so which is interesting, and probably, for a lot of people controversial, and for a lot of people a bit scary, but purely from an assessment standpoint, there's some early evidence to suggest that it's been quite effective, because there's a lot of learn at your own pace, or
Mm,
adaption, that sort of adaption to the needs of the individual, that can be done through engagement with the AI
mhm,
tutor,
mhm,
and
mhm.
almost instantly, like it has like a responsive nature that promotes qualities that resonate with the student. I assume some of it seemed a bit gamified, like learning through choosing the type of games that the student wants to play, as opposed to forcing all the
Right.
students to play the same style of game, etc. Just curious if at
Yeah.
your company you've seen any shifts in the user experience, or opportunity within the user experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think the beautiful thing, more so, I would say, just, not just industry wide, but also just in education as a whole, there's been this shift around, obviously the introduction of AI, and then what that means to have that within your classroom, right? Or like, is it okay, as you mentioned, controversial, blah, blah, blah. For me, I would say my hot take is that it's a tool to be leveraged, just like when Microsoft Word came out, or Excel, or, like you can just keep cycling all the way back to like industrial revolution. Ultimately, it's something that can be leveraged. And like we talked about with humanities, there's still the human there. It's still the person on the
Right.
other side. And I think education as a whole seems to be shifting. Um, I would say, for the past 3 to 5 years, around this idea of, individuality, in that, it's far more multifaceted in the learning approaches than it maybe was. So, when we were in school or what have you, it's not so much about the binary of learning, but it's more about your journey to get there. And I think that, being aware of those trends and those indicators within education, regardless of who's learning and what at what age, being able to get ahead of that and listen, and then infuse that into what you build. And I think that that's something that we've across product teams that I've worked on, and projects that we're always aiming to do, whether it's through discovery or, very into alpha or beta town, it's looking at those things and always iterating to, facilitate like where people are at, because people are
Yeah.
not so linear. And why then should their educational or learning development tools be?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, and I am speaking out of my own, knowledge base
Yeah.
here, but my initial feeling is that this actually almost sounds like an opportunity where stickiness in the tech space is not a dark pattern, where creating something that might feel more addictive,
Mm,
for the individual could,
mm,
in education. I mean, I know addictive is a loaded word, but like if you can use the dark patterns of social media and apply them to the education space,
mm.
it almost sounds like that's not a dark pattern anymore, but like an effective approach.
Well, and I think that's, yeah, yeah, I think that it's an interesting positionality because, you know, uh, it's kind of like the old and the new. And I think whether it's your frame of thinking or your the way in which you view the thing, maybe the old way was to look at the binary and this is a pass or fail or something, right?
Mm.
But maybe the new way is to go, okay, so what is Gen Alpha or Gen Z or even millennials or boomers? What are they doing? How are they engaging with um, you know technology, and outside of work or outside of education, and then leveraging those natural patterns or observations, or I mean, we talk about delight all the time in the user side of things, but being able to have your eyes open, right? Like pay attention to what is bringing people joy, or what are some of their patterns or their positioning, and how could you reimagine what it looks like to have that kind of energy when I look at career development, or when
Yeah,
I
I
look
was
at
I was gonna say, is education, when your education had delight? I missed that one. No.
but yeah, I think it's like how we um it's really just paying attention to the world around us. And I think, being able to see those things and then find ways to do what we do, in a more optimized or better serving way. So, I think that's kind of what it boils down to.
Pitching investors? If you're hearing more, we'll pass for now. Then let's talk terms. It's time to rethink your pitch. Our free guide reveals how specific UX elements directly influence the key metrics investors scrutinize, like retention, defensibility, and growth and scalability. Learn to present your product's UX in a way that speaks the language of investors and turns interest into investment. At Unsolicited UX, we put together a free guide to help founders get ahead of tough VC questions before they're even asked. It's called the Investor Objection Preemption Guide, and in it, you'll learn exactly how to identify, prepare for, and neutralize the 7 most common UX-related objections investors raise during pitches. Use the link in the show notes to get your free copy today.
Okay, so something that I wanted to ask you about was, so you work at a global company, but
Hmm.
thinking about taking your experience at a global company and applying it to more of a startup space.
Hmm.
If you could give advice to someone that had, let's say, an extreme budget constraint,
Yeah.
and they had to be very specific about how they allocated their resource budget. And
Hmm.
I know, of course, it's going to be context specific, and what is the problem, what is the need, etc. But
Right.
generally speaking, what advice would you give? Like, are there any methodologies or go-to's that you would apply in a very budget constraint circumstance?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, going back to this idea of like reflexivity and being able to, regardless of if you're plopped into a startup or you're plopped into a global like environment, being able to assess your surroundings and how to best serve in the constraints that you have, whether that's time, money, resources, or even people on the other side of that, those participants. And so I would say, in general, I think my kind of advice would be, just get yourself out of your head would be the first piece of advice. And then I would likely just figure out, what is it that, they're serving, or what are they doing? Again, differentiators is where my like strategist comes into play. But differentiators, what about the current industry that you're trying to get into as a startup is doing that is different? What makes you uniquely you? And then in doing so, how can you build something to serve a need that might be just grossly unmet? And to find that out, you got to talk to people. And I think that whether that's, you know, uh, interviews just one to one, more like coffee style, where it's more open, or it could be very specific, like going through user flow. It could be usability, could be a focus group. The all that I mentioned there could be 15 to 90 minutes, and being able to sort of get at, like, of course, in user research, obviously 5 users gets to about 85% of usability when we're looking at coded solutions or products. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is, "How do you work within the constraint?" And I think that that is such a powerful, really like mantra, regardless of your discipline, or who you're working for, or if you're running your own company or you're starting up your own company, being able to just leverage and yeah, I think that that's definitely something that I always use as a guiding light.
Okay, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
And I just want to ask you to make a prediction.
Mm.
Let's say in 5 years, what do you
Mhm.
think the biggest changes that you'll see in the ed tech and assessment space from
Mm.
maybe from a user experience standpoint?
Yeah. I think from the user's perspective, I think users are going to see a lot more offerings and tools. If I look in my crystal ball, that
Yeah.
that very much serve who they are, not who people think they are,
Mm.
or perhaps um, you know, a way of thinking that is maybe now or what they've previously experienced as it relates to education or just learning, lifelong learning. And so whether that's, these things around personalization or gamification, or kind of like breaking the mold on, like, wow, that didn't even feel like I was doing something that was learny or like
Mm.
educational or like whatever. I think that I would hope that that is going to be something that is out there. So it's a bit of a prediction slash hopefulness, though. I think if that's what we're seeing now, we'll certainly be seeing more of that in the future. And I think being able to create things that consider, again, from the humanity side, the individual and the uniqueness about them as a measurement that should be, not only considered but empowered through their individual self, as they approach education or learning or a career or what have you.
Okay. Well, Amanda, thank you for being here and chatting with me.
Yeah.
And can you just say one more time where people can find you?
Yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn, and I am just there, and
Just living
always
there.
I'm just like living there. But no, you can find me on there. And I also have a portfolio site because, always a designer. I have a lot of my research strategy and design work online at iamjensen.com, and we can always share that out. But you can find that on my LinkedIn as well. So those are pretty much where I am. And then here in the world, yes.
Okay. And here in the world in Los Angeles, right? Is it okay to
Yes.
say that?
Yes, it is okay to say that. Yes, Tinseltown.
Yeah. Okay. Have a good one.
Cool. See you.
After my conversation with Amanda, I decided to dedicate this episode's deep dive to the Wizard of Oz prototype testing method,
a low-cost, minimal-effort approach ideal for testing AI concepts and features. Wizard of Oz prototyping allows you to simulate AI functionalities using human intervention, enabling you to validate ideas and gather user feedback without extensive development. I created a full video on this topic, which you can check out on YouTube. The link is in the show notes below. For now, here's the TLDR from that video. The Wizard of Oz method simulates AI functionalities using human intervention, allowing you to test and refine AI concepts without full-scale development. By observing user interactions with the simulated AI, teams can gauge trust levels, identify points of confusion, and understand user expectations. Wizard of Oz helps determine if users comprehend the AI's capabilities and limitations, ensuring the product aligns with user mental models. Through these simulated interactions, you can assess whether users find the AI features valuable and their perceptions around integration into their current workflows. This cost-effective method enables rapid iteration and feedback collection without the need of extensive AI development, making it ideal for budget-conscious teams. Insights from Wizard of Oz tests can guide design decisions, identify necessary adjustments, reveal gaps in user understanding, can teach you about user value perceptions, help prioritize your roadmap, and inform the development of user-centric AI solutions. That was the TLDR on the Wizard of Oz method. You can check out the full video on the Unsolicited UX YouTube channel.
Thanks for listening to the Unsolicited UX podcast. If today's conversation sparked an idea or a question, I'd love to hear from you. You can find more episodes on Spotify, deeper content on YouTube, or you can just head over to unsolicitedux.com. And if you're a builder or backing a product and wonder how research can help you move faster and smarter, let's chat. I offer free consultations to explore what just right research could look like for you and your team. Email me at j@unsolicitedux.com. See you next time.